Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to create a DynamoDB table, and then we are going to query data from that table. The intended audience for this video are beginners who are just looking to get started on DynamoDB and who just wants to see a simple example of DynamoDB. All operations we are going to do would be through the console, and I'm also going to be posting follow-up videos where we would go into more advanced concepts and operations. So to create a table in DynamoDB from the AWS console, from the DynamoDB console, you click Create Table. We are going to create a table for books. And now we need to select our keys. When selecting the partition key for DynamoDB table, you need to select a key which your application or the users of your table are going to use to query data, because it is through a partition key that DynamoDB would be able to efficiently retrieve data from your table. Partition key tells DynamoDB exactly which partition the corresponding record belongs to, so it can go directly to that partition. Then you can also specify an optional sort key. It allows for sorting and searching among the items associated with the same key. And actually what it also tells is within the partition, where does the data exist? Just like the partition key tells in which partition does the record exist, and within the partition, the location of data is derived from the sort key. Now we are touching on a very important NoSQL database design consideration here. And this is one of the main differences between traditional databases, the relational databases, and NoSQL databases. NoSQL database, you need to know upfront the behavior of your application. Whereas with SQL databases, you get a lot of flexibility in terms of querying the data. And this could be after the fact. After you have designed your schema, you can accommodate efficient querying later as well. But with NoSQL databases, you need to know upfront what your querying needs and your application's behavior is going to be. Only then you can implement an efficient design for your NoSQL tables. Here, we are going to assume that our application is going to use author as the main key to query data. So we are going to use author as the partition key, and then we are also going to use title as the sort key. We will go with the default settings for that are being provided and that you can see here. One thing that I want to quickly touch on is the read and write capacity unit. This is DynamoDB's default way to provision capacity for your tables. The great thing with DynamoDB is you just tell DynamoDB what kind of performance you need, and it just ensures that the necessary hardware and resources are provisioned to provide your expected performance and throughput. So here the default values are 5 read capacity units and similarly 5 write capacity units. A capacity unit, whether it's read or write, so for example, in case of read capacity unit, 1 unit means strongly consistent read in 1 second. So 1 unit would mean 1 strongly consistent read, or 2 eventually consistent read within 1 second. And same goes for write capacity. It would mean either 1 strongly consistent write in a second, or 2 eventually consistent writes within a second. If you don't understand this, just ignore. And in subsequent videos, I will cover this in much more depth. And this is probably just going to derail you from the current objective, which is just to see a simple DynamoDB example. Okay. The table got created. Now we are going to add some data to the table. Within actions, I will go to create item, and then here I can specify the data. I will go with some popular titles. So edit title number 1, and then I'm gonna add few more books. So I've added a total of 6 titles, and now we are going to perform some scan and query operations on these items. So within the table, we have this button, explore table items, and here we can perform the two kind of operations supported by DynamoDB. One is scan, one is query. We'll talk about query first. Query is the efficient way to retrieve data from DynamoDB. Here you specify the partition key, and as I mentioned earlier, with the partition key, DynamoDB would know exactly which partition the record exists in, so it would be able to go to the exact partition. And then you can also specify an optional sort key. With the sort key, as you can tell from the name, you can sort the results, and it supports some other comparison operators as well. Right now, we're just gonna go with equal to. Okay, so first we're just gonna search based on the author. I would just copy the author from here. So we added 2 titles from George Martin. So those are the titles that are showing up. And similarly, if we search the other author, we will get the title for that author. We can also perform scan. Scan is an expensive operation, especially if you have large number of items in your table, because it scans the entire table. But there are valid use cases to do scan, and they are supported by DynamoDB. And you have a lot more flexibility because it's doing a full table scan. So you have a lot more flexibility in terms of the kind of, you can scan based on any attribute, and you have a lot more conditions that you can use. So I'm just going to do contains on the title. I'm going to say king. So any title with the value king in it, it'll return. Okay. So this concludes this specific video. I'm going to add subsequent videos where we would go into more advanced level concepts.